Welcome to the Alex Bromwich Presents podcast, episode 3, season 1. Said those the wrong way around, doesn't really matter too much. Just before I go into the topic for today's podcast, let me just ask you to please like this if you enjoyed the content. If you like watching the video, subscribe to us on YouTube, like our Facebook page, and please, most of all, if you think that what I'm going to talk about today would add value to anyone else that you know that may not have come across this podcast, please don't hesitate to share it with them. Obviously, I would be very humbled if you would do that, and I would really appreciate the reach that could help us with. So that being said, what are we going to talk about today? I wanted to talk about an experience I had on Facebook, actually, just a couple of weeks ago that I did post about in my Instagram, but I wanted to just bring it up here because I think it's something that a lot of people could learn from, and a lot of people could take some insights from. I'm part of a online entrepreneur group on Facebook. It's a closed group, and it's got a lot of really great individuals in there who want to do a lot of really great things in the world. It also attracts a lot of young people with a lot of high ambition, and that's awesome because they bring a lot of energy to the group and they bring in a lot of enthusiasm. But they also, with that, they obviously bring in a quite high level of naivety, in how the business world works and what they can and cannot achieve. And some of that is brilliant because, you know, really it's not like an old curmudgeon like me saying, oh, well, you just don't know how it works, young man, and all that sort of stuff. I think it's really just genuine trying to get something done and trying to make a difference, and that was awesome. So one young gentleman came into the group and he was asking for help with business plans, and I jumped in the evening and I noticed that he'd posted earlier in the day, quite some hours ago, and no one had given him any help at all. So I jumped on and said, hey man, you know, send me a DM and I'll quite happily talk you through some of this stuff and see what I can do to help you. Cutting a long story short, because this could turn into a really long story if I went through the whole discussion that we had and all the details, he was looking to form his own business based on the same model of which the company that he was working with straight out of university. He'd been working there just for 3 months since he'd graduated, and he was trying to find a way of attracting funding to his business. His business was purely a skills-based business for himself, and he was trying to understand how he could attract money. And so I went through the various questions that I would normally go through with myself, with one of my products businesses that we look at, you know, in my day job, and also the stuff that Alina and I look at outside of my day job. And I went through the simple questions, you know, who are your customers? And he didn't really know. He said, you know, everyone is my customer. So, okay, that's not a great sign to start with, but okay. Do you know who the people are that you would like to target as investors? No, I was kind of hoping you would tell me that. And I was like, okay, well, do you want to get a line of credit to start your business? How much money do you have to put in yourself? How much money do you want to raise? Do you want that as a line of credit, as I said, or do you want it as some sort of VC money? And he said, well, whichever is the cheapest. Ideally, I don't want to have to give away any of the company, and I don't want to have to pay any interest on the thing. So he was looking effectively for a bursary or just a simple put out to get himself incubated. But his skill-based business was of no rapid growth value. It was only a business type, and I don't want to go into it because it's a very niche area, and the guy would be easy to identify based on that. But you're not only going to scale that in the way that he was planning to do it with more labor. And that means it's a very cash intensive business. It means he's going to run on a fairly thin margin, and it's not going to be an attractive proposition to an investor if you're not going to allow them to have a significant cut in the game or significant skin in the game. And we went back and forth on this, and I asked him about how much he was going to put in, and he said he hadn't got anything. He said he basically required the money in order to pay for himself to live when he quit his job. My suggestion to him was very strongly that he didn't need to get investment for it. What he needed to do was grow the business and start working on it while he was working his day job. And his answer was that he didn't have time for that. He didn't have the energy to do that. It wasn't a physical job that he did. It wasn't a physical business that he was working to do. So he wasn't going to be looking in the face of doing 8 hours of a physical regular day job and then, you know, however many more hours he could squeeze in of the day of another physical job. And it really sort of made me feel a bit down, because I feel like he had a really strong ambition, a really strong idea, but was completely naive as to what's really required in order to be good and successful, and what's really required in terms of scaling a business. And that also makes me reflect on a lot of the online businesses that I see today, and the online businesses that I've been looking at, you know, myself as well. And that's around the sustainability of them. You can sustain these things in a short term, and you can grow profits very rapidly in a short term. But if you don't have a sustainable business model over a very long time, then your brand or your business is going to eventually fade out. And I don't think that that should really be the goal for anyone going into a business, particularly not one where they're going to invest themselves and invest, you know, very heavily. So I think that it's something that should be really heavily considered before someone starts out on a business venture. They should really try and make sure that they've processed what it means to do that, what's required from them. No one's going to come and invest money in your business if you're not going to invest your time and money in your business yourself. No one's going to write you a check, a blank check, and say, hey, just go and build it. You know, all these people who we say, oh, we think they're, you know, overnight successes in Silicon Valley, they weren't. That wasn't how it went down. They've been through the mill several times. I'm sure there was maybe a very short period, you know, a good few years ago now, where some of that may have occurred because of the boom, but that's over. It's not here, and it's definitely not in a skills-based business today, whereas it still could be perhaps potentially in some sort of tech if the tech was extremely innovative and they could see some potential very high long-term impact across a broad range of industries on that. So then it sort of brings me back to the question of what are the questions that you should ask yourself when you're trying to start a business, and what should you consider? And this applies not only for a business for yourself or a business you want to start, it could also apply for, you know, starting a new product or a new portfolio in the company that you're working as well. And the way that I like to think about it, because this has affected my thinking so much, is the way that my friend Matt Watkinson has summarized it in the tool that he calls the grid. Quick disclosure here, I'm mentioned in the acknowledgements because Matt's a very good friend of mine, and we talked about his book and about a lot of the theories that he was going in greatly during the time that he was writing it. I hope that I was able to positively influence him on some of those things, and he was good enough to give me this signed early edition copy during the time. So this book is called The Grid, the decision-making tool for every business, including yours. Crucially, yours is not different. And it's by a gentleman called Matt Watkinson. I'll put the link in the notes so that everyone can see it. And what Matt does is he basically breaks down any business model into 9 elements, or any business into 9 elements. He looks at various different ways. I'm not going to go through the book in detail now, I'm going to keep this quite short tonight, but he really boils it down to what are the 9 essential elements that you need to understand about that business or about that product, which are then going to drive its long-term sustainable success. And for me, one of the big things about when I reflect on internet businesses particularly, and also about skill-based businesses which are dependent on labour, is how do you differentiate yourselves versus your competition? How do you protect what you have? And the very few ways to protect intellectual property, if it's a common intellectual property. Affiliate marketing is a common intellectual property. You can't protect that in any way. You know, if you're selling someone else's brand, you can't really brand that off yourself as well. So if you want something that's going to be long-term sustainable as a business that you're going to work on, you need to find a way to creating intellectual property in that then secures the success in that market to your company rather than to a lot of Me Too's. And I think that you can reflect very nicely on the stuff that like Gary Vee talks about and Daymond John also talk about in their Instagram feeds and in their YouTube feeds a lot about branding and about how you actually make a difference as a product. It's not about how good your offer is, it's how good people perceive your offer. And then as you can grow your brand and you can make your brand associative to your audience, so your audience also needs to be very well defined and very well understood, you're then going to be able to release more intrinsic capital in that structure of the brand, and it's going to bring more and more back to your business. And whilst you can add value to people without asking for anything back, so marketing your brand, then that's going to build even more trust capital in your brand towards your target audience. And then when the day comes that you do ask them, when you do ask them to give you some money for something, there's going to be an overwhelming yes from your audience. And also the great thing about brands is they are protectable. You can trademark brands, you can get intellectual property secured against a brand, and that's where you need to be crucial in. So this is a really quick one compared to the last couple of days podcasts. I just wanted to go into this point about how you should plan towards a business, how you should work towards it. I will go into more detail in the mechanics of business plans because I think they are important and they can help, particularly if you are looking for a line of credit or you're looking for a funding from a VC or private equity in that way. But if you're interested in exploring the idea of starting a business or working on new products and portfolios, I highly recommend reading Matt's book, The Grid. It's a very quick read. It even has a fast track chapter in the front where it goes into the whole concept very quickly, and I think you'll find it immensely valuable. So please like this if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe on YouTube, and please share it with anyone who you think might find this as of value. And I look forward to speaking to all of you tomorrow. Thanks very much. Bye.